First time I met Gary, I remember that pretty distinctly. I had already interviewed with Steve, his brother, a couple of weeks earlier, and it had seemed apparent to me that I wasn't going to get the job. This was back in the spring of 1985. And then I got a call back from Steve asking me to come to his home to do a second interview as sort of a tryout for possibly working, not at the park in Minnesota, but at the one down in Gurnee, Great America. And I went down to Steve's house, which was an out-of-the-way place in Prior Lake. And he had sort of a split level in his basement where there was a makeshift studio set up down there. And I went down with my little portfolio in my hand and a lot of confidence and walked into the room, and Gary was there. Steve and Gary wanted me to draw Gary. Talk about intimidated. I mean, here I am in this guy's house. He's a great caricature artist. And here I had to draw this guy right on the spot. No beginning anything. Went through and did the drawing of Gary the best I could, and I showed it to him, and they proceeded to rip it to shreds, not literally but figuratively, going on and on about this structure and that structure and this line and that line. And but Gary, even though he was tough at that interview and definitely didn't hold anything back, he was very supportive too about it. I mean, he definitely made me feel like I wouldn't have been there talking to them if they didn't think I had the talent or skills or whatever they were looking for to do the job.
And he was sitting there having some yucks with other caricaturists who I hadn't yet known. And I introduced myself. I said, "Hi, I'm Ed." He said, "Oh, I've been waiting for you." And Tom told me all about you because I was referred by Tom Richmond. And I said, "Well, what did Tom say about me?" "Well, he said you're a little weird." "But that's okay. We all are."
And he says, "I have a business at Six Flags." So I go, wow. So I was thinking, hey, I had art school at the American Academy, and I did portrait type art. So I said, "Will you hire me?" And he says, "Can you do this?" I says, "I think I can." He says, "Well, bring me some of your work and show it to me." So I went out to the trunk of my car and got a sketchbook out, showed it, and he really liked it. So he says, "Hey, if you can do portraits, you can do caricatures." So at that point in 1989, it was summer '89, I started working for Gary.
The first time I saw Gary draw, I thought that his ability to do those beautiful drawings in such a short amount of time, and how he whipped his lines around and how they just flowed off the end of his pencil, was so damn impressive, and he just made it look so easy. And I loved watching him draw.
Art just spews out of him. I was like just witnessing a master work. It was just like effortless work, just like it just seemed so effortless the way he did it. It was so sharp and tight, and it just blew me away.
I was amazed at how good he was. He had really good lines. I mean, his lines looked like a marker, even though he was using a pencil, a thick pencil.
I mean, he knew exactly where to go. He was very confident in his line work as far as his pencil, and he was very confident with his airbrush, and he put down the right colors in the right places. He's the first person I ever saw put black in the line as the line eye, the top line, and fill in the color with black. And I still don't see anybody do that quite like he did. He would draw with that airbrush too.
It just seemed like this is the way it should be done. It was like this was it. This is what we all strived for. This is what we all wanted to be like. And I had never seen anything like it before.
Because everybody else was drawing like him.
Exactly.
Or in some weird mutation.
We were all his kids, we're all his offspring that he was trying to breed, and we latched on for as long as we could until we broke away.
He saw everybody as being good, and he didn't see ugly. He'd always say ugly is it's a personality trait rather than a physical trait. So the way he saw people is the way he drew people. Big eyes, real sweet looking, everybody's kind of playful, a lot like Gary. And he was a master. He was a master of, making people look really good.
He had more of a whimsical look to his work. It almost had a children's book a little lighter quality than some caricature artists, maybe a little more editorial, a little harsher, a little more biting with their, parody of a person. He caricatured people, but he kept it a little light. He didn't go too. He could exaggerate real well and do that, but he didn't make you look ugly funny. He was still able to have a certain cuteness to his work,
First time I really worked next to Gary, he said, "You sure you want to work next to me?" And I went, "Yeah, I can do it, sure." Yeah, I thought I was, I thought it was way better than it was, and I drew next to him, and I did probably 10 drawings the entire day. He just had a line around the corner, and he was relentless. I think he did it to teach me a lesson.
You draw for a while and you think, oh wow, I'm getting pretty good at this. This is great. And then Gary sits down next to you and you're like, I suck. It's just the sigh of, why am I here?
I remember sitting next to him and just my lines were just kind of like going everywhere, and I didn't feel like I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
And he would sit there and actually tell you certain things, like, you might want to do this, you might want to do that. There were times when I was sitting in the chair drawing and would notice he's behind me, and suddenly you start crumbling, and it took a while before I got over that. I never got nervous drawing, except when Gary or somebody of his caliber was watching, which was rare. But yeah, I remember just kind of turning to mush every time I sat next to him.
Oh God! Oh Lord! Oh! Talk about intimidation.
I never felt like such a kindergartner in my whole freaking life.
I'm a 300-pound man. I felt it was about a few grams.
Hello.
The first few times it was just, I just couldn't take it. It was scary. You felt like you were constantly being judged and constantly
Right. Wondering, oh shit, you put a line down that you weren't sure of. And then you could, every time you just like look out of the corner of your eye and see if Gary's watching. But he was always drawn, so you never thought about it. And then they'd catch you later. Oh, by the way, I noticed the way you did this.
Yeah. But if you worked next to Gary, at least you knew you'd get a crowd. Yeah. So then they'd have to come over to you and be like, hey, this guy's open.
Not necessarily.
Well, depending on what you...
and he's still got his line.
Like,
he keeps secretary. They're like, what's he? Well, they're waiting. And Gary's like, yeah, there's no waiting over here. Everybody stays. That's just how it was.
They looked away. They don't want to even look at your face.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes I would get like half a hamburger.
No matter how good you got, I mean, Gary, you sit next to Gary, he would always get more business.
He's complete package, this dude.
Yeah, I mean, no matter how good you draw a caricature or whatever, it's like, he could bring them in, he could keep them entertained, sitting down, and then with the finished product, it's always, bam, here you go. And they're always laughing and stuff.
We had a guy working for us, a number of years ago, and he was just an amazing practical joker. He's an airbrusher, and he and one of the caricature artists really didn't get along too well, and he would always be playing practical jokes on the caricature artist. And one day Tyrese kept getting up and taking breaks all the time. So he came over and he had this stuff that they make stink bombs out of, and every time he left, he'd stick a couple drops of it in his airbrush hose, and he'd come back and start painting, and it smelled like a really bad fart. I mean, just really bad. And everybody in the whole booth could smell it because it was really potent.
Oh my God.
It was really funny. And he went all day long like that, and everybody was kind of in on it. So every time it started smelling bad, they'd all be looking at Tyrese going, God, man.
Gary was really good at making the customers laugh, and he did this by delivering these incredible anecdotes and one-liners and witty comments that just spewed out of his mouth from his little Rolodex of, Garyisms that he's learned throughout the years. And some of them were inherited by his brother Steve, but basically, if he said it more than 3 times, it became a Garyism.
You'd say to little kids, who are obviously brother and sister, so is that your wife? No, that's my sister. You're married to your sister?
use your head. That's probably the most popular that he always uses. Use your head. Started with guy, and then use your head.
A girl who had freckles, he'd say, looks like you got caught in a manure shredding machine.
Guy, what are you thinking? Use your head.
Look at this guy's face. He looks like a tomato with lips.
For crying out loud.
Look like you're constipated.
Shut up and draw.
You can't be doing that shit. So what are you, brain dead?
Really good. Really good.
Hello? Hello, hello?
Hello?
God damn it.
Don't draw his nose like a penis. How do you run with those ears like that?
Kid with big ears, you look like a water jug, Hey guy, you guys married, dating, or just messing around? Shut up. Hey, will you shut up?
Can I draw you naked?
Use your head.
Are you guys married? To each other?
He would use all kinds of sexual imagery to help you learn how to use the equipment. And it worked. That's why he would do it. And it always went back to cows and bulls and farm animals because he used to actually he was a farm boy.
You squeeze two things close enough together, you make cleavage.
And Nicole, the airbrush artist, came up to him while he was drawing and told him we were out of orange paint. And he looked her dead in the eye. And he said, "You tell me how to make orange right now or you're fired." And the look on her face was just like, she goes, red, yellow. And he just goes, God, I can't believe it. Use your head.
Quit picking on me!
Gary was an amazing teacher. He was just an amazing instructor. And that's something I always liked about him, was that he had his style was really academic. It was really step by step. He himself, the stuff he would actually do was just universal. It was just really, it was a great style, but he could teach it, and everything he did, he could explain why he was doing it.
I was kind of amazed by it, but because maybe I was used to my high school art teacher saying, you know what, don't worry, you're really good, you're one of the best in the school. And Gary didn't do that. Gary would tell you from square one, you have a lot to learn, and this is what you did wrong, now correct it and move on.
If you were doing a good job, Gary would let you know. If you're doing a bad job, depending on who you were, he'd tell you different ways. Like with me, he'd tell me I suck.
He would be tough with you. He would get in your face and say, that drawing sucked, He didn't hold anything back. Gary was a guy that wore everything on his sleeve, If he laughed, it was because he thought something was funny. And if he winced and looked at you and gave you that Gary, dude or guy, you knew you'd screwed up.
I would start some caricatures and I would go, oh God, I really don't like this one. It's really. He says, how the hell are you gonna know until you finish it? He said, how you know what you're gonna be ending? You got to know what you're gonna end up with before you knock it out. Before you say, okay, never mind.
He's a really good teacher. He had a really good way of explaining things.
He wasn't the kind of guy who would tell you that was terrible and then just walk away. He would tell you why it was terrible, or what he thought you needed to do to make it work.
Gary as a person was the guy that would give you the shirt off his back. Always trying to help people out.
He was in the trenches with us when we were working, when we were drawing. He wasn't just, go do this. He was there with you, and he knew what the struggles were.
He was sitting next to me, and I did a really good drawing, and it looked like the people, and they didn't say, I don't like it, I don't look like me, I don't want to buy it, and Gary's looking at it, looks just like you. He'd defend you, if he thought you did a good job, he'd say it, And
he wasn't a boss, he wasn't this,
he sort of melted with everybody.
Yeah, he was having fun as much as anybody else.
Right, yeah, and it was like, we were like fucking roommates and shit. Like, he was part of the gang,
Apparently, one summer was very, very, very busy at Six Flags, and I guess the bathroom was a 2-minute walk. Yeah. Yet he wanted to save time, so he went into the back door of Yankee Airbrush and apparently pissed on a cup, and somebody walked in on him. I think it was Keith or something. Justin walked in on him. And of course Justin didn't know. He went out and told everybody. Yeah.
But that's how much he had to work. He didn't have time to go the fucking 2 minutes away to take a piss. He had to do it right there on the spot and get back. Because we're all slacking off. He had to get the fucking work done,
as a craftsman, the guy could turn anything into something functional, and we need this. Yeah, we'll just take. He was like MacGyver, basically.
I mean, he built all the housing that we drew on.
Mm-hmm.
The caricature, county, Yankee. He designed and built all that. His whole house, I've seen it. He built that.
He actually bought a pen that had the gels on them. He's like, oh, this just feels like silicone. He's like, yeah, but I can make these. And then like a week later, he had like 10 of them. And everybody was buying them, getting them from Gary.
That pencil stuff, it's probably a lot, it's really strange to see because, it looked like a larva. And that's, another thing Gary made for us. And kept advancing it, trying different materials each summer. Really, hey, for another $12, you got the newest of the new Gary technology. This one shapes into your hand. And
you got the 2003 model.
He's like, yeah, take all these empty bottles, like caricature paint bottles, and change the tops, and here you go, airbrush bottles. It's like...
I watched him modify his Micron so it set better and was more comfortable in his hand. And then he was using that. He could paint faster by just pouring paint in a cup and paint his caricatures than he could trying to clean the frickin' bottle to stick in the side to make it come out,
Every single one of my paches, when I first got VLs, he helped me customize each one of them to just exactly what a VL Pro. I don't know how to explain it, but he showed me how to convert them into the Pro, just filing down pieces.
The drawing tables at Great America, instead of buying more, he just bought some board, some Borco, and some PVC tubing, And now we're using PVC board.
PVC? I mean, he carried that stuff around with him everywhere he went. So.
PVC. PVC, yeah.
PVC.
It's PVC. Oh my lord! For years, I thought his house was built out of PVC.
With PVC or with something else, or then he could build. Yeah, MacGyver. He could build something out of anything.
He's like MacGyver because he can make that thing that much better, and it was better than what you would have got.
Didn't matter what went wrong, he could reroute air to somebody somehow.
You can make white out of pink and yellow. You ain't got white, black, purple, green. You got white.
That's what I remember a lot about it. Just, where do you come up with this?
Yeah.
I was like, dude,
it works. Why isn't anybody else thought of this? What is it?
It's so simple, man.
And he was always tinkering to try to fix something, change something, make it better.
He was the epitome of somebody who's still trying to learn, even after so many years of experience, still trying to reach for something new.
Well, he loved to do the walking sticks. He liked to whittle with, he had a gimbal tool and stuff like that he would spend hours down in his workshop doing that stuff.
A few years ago, I helped Gary build his website. In trade for doing that, he gave me one of his walking sticks. And I have it right here. And if you look close, you can see how nicely hand carved this was. And he put these marbles in for the eyes, which he did normally. But this one he especially liked because for some reason the way it was set and maybe the color of the wood or whatever, when you shined a light on it a certain way, they glowed like a cat's eyes. And I can actually show you with the camera light here. They glowed like a cat's eyes, as you can see. And Gary was really proud of that. And just the fact that he liked this one and he gave it to me just makes this incredibly special for me. In the mid-90s, Gary was diagnosed with diabetes. And it was very serious. And it was type 1 adult onset diabetes.
You can manage it, but you're not going to stop it. You're not going to get rid of it once you have it. It's diabetics don't become diabetics and then stop being a diabetic. Right. Rarely, maybe the type 2 diabetics, you can control it a little bit. My family, I'm fortunate that people tend to be type 2, which isn't as bad. It's like borderline. It's a guy I work with, he's got diabetes, but it's type 2, so he doesn't have to take the shots. Mm-hmm. But he does monitor himself. He has to watch what he eats all the time. You see him tricking himself in the finger, and if it's sugar, he'll say, okay, I can't eat that. Right. But, Gary had worse kind of diabetes. Gary had type 1. Mm-hmm. My stepbrother had type 1 childhood diabetes. He was a kid with it, so he was very sick, real skinny and stuff. He was always, my dad and my stepmom would rushing him to the hospital. He'd be out in the backyard, he'd joking or something, and then his eyes would blow up, and my dad would run in the house and grab some orange juice, and you got to give him some sugar. He'd start dropping. And my dad went to try to give him to drink the orange juice, and he'd knock it out of my dad's hand. He'd be swearing and stuff because the sugar was affecting his mind. It was making him crazy, you know. My dad said you could see his eyes kind of going up like that. And they'd get him in a car and rush him to the hospital because if they did, you know, he'd almost go into a coma.
He was very open about it, and every day at work, you know, he would go off and test himself, you know, prick his finger and check his blood sugar levels.
By the t-shirt booths at County, there's that window there. He used to jump through there.
Okay.
Yeah.
For what?
Just to get in.
Yeah.
Like since there was nobody on that side and it was busy and it was, you know, things going on over here, he used to like grab onto a little, like grab onto the ledge and just sort of slide in. So he'd be working, all of a sudden, whoa! So he would jump out of nowhere. And then he would grab his insulin and just stab himself through the pants. Cool.
I remember talking to him on the phone one time, and I was just having a normal conversation with him, and all of a sudden he was like, "Hey Paul, I gotta go. I can't feel my legs. I forgot to take my insulin." And so we ended the conversation, and he went and took care of it.
I think when we announced Gary's passing on the forum, one thing that really struck me was that a lot of people didn't know who he was. And you know, it's like a lot of great musicians, a lot of great artists, a lot of great, you know, whoever. You see their work, you see the effect that they leave, but you don't necessarily know who they are. And that was the thing with Gary, was that he influenced hundreds of artists, of caricature artists, hundreds of them, generations of caricature artists. And quite a few people didn't really know who he was. They didn't know who Gary Fasen himself, they didn't know who he was.
Those 4 summers at Great America when I worked next to him were absolutely the most influential thing that ever happened to me in terms of art and cartooning, and I would not be a fraction of the artist I am today without having worked with Gary. It was special and fantastic.
You have to say that in a way he kind of made it, like when it comes to life, because when you look at life, it's like you want to accomplish something, you want to get somewhere, you want to leave a legacy behind, and he definitely did that.
I don't want to sound cliche either, but he was a true inspiration. He really changed my life in every aspect.
And I think about him every day, and I really do miss him. He's still a big influence, and it's gonna be a tough road before I finally get to the point where I can accept that I still, to this day, whenever I finish something that I'm particularly proud of, whenever I do something, I still want to call him. I still want to come down, you know, to the mall and say hi to him.
I guess that was the weird part about it. It was never a boss. Never a sense that he was just a boss. You know, you felt like he had something more to learn from him. He was a teacher, he was a mentor, he was all these things, you know, that went beyond bosses.
I wish I would have told him that before he passed away, that he was a good friend.
Gary was as close to an older brother as I'll probably ever have.
We lived with each other, all of us. We lived with each other for months on end, when you think about it. So, and he was dad. He was the guy you went to for. So yeah, he was very much like a father figure.
Gary, to me, was a true legend that not a lot of people got to know. Obviously, those of us who did, the artists that worked with him, you know, we got to meet him. We got to meet this amazing man, and a lot of us became friends with him, and very honored to have had that opportunity. And I'll never ever forget him. He was a big part of my life.
He's helped me and touched me more than anybody that I've ever met or experienced an encounter with in life. So, a pretty special guy, and obviously we all miss him. And you know, I'm to the point now where I think about him and I smile.